now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:36 now on O'Connor and Company. Thanks for tuning in here. Tuesday, the 13th day of February. Coming up at 7:05, Craig Shirley, historian and author, a brand new book, Search for Reagan. At 7:35, Jamie Brennan, running for Frederick County School Board. And then at 8:05, the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, Winsome Sears. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock.
Good morning.
Good morning, Julie. And the aforementioned Craig Shirley joined a good dozen Republicans, former ambassadors, former governors, former congressmen, former Attorney General Ed Meese, in an open letter to Nikki Haley asking her to step out of the nomination race. Part of the letter read, in 1964, then Governor Nelson Rockefeller stayed in the race against Barry Goldwater too long, even when it was apparent he had lost the nomination. As a result, Rockefeller ended up hated by the rank and file of the GOP. Do you really want to become the Nelson Rockefeller of the 21st century? That's the message Nikki Haley received from this group, including our next guest, former Virginia Governor Jim Gilmore. Governor Gilmore, always good to talk to you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Good. Thank you very much, Larry. Pleasure to be here with you and Julie.
Well, and I'll tell you, most people would say, well, yeah, Governor Gilmore's a good, solid conservative Republican, but he also represents Virginia, which, you know, has a history of sort of sliding back and forth on the political spectrum. You're seen as, let me just say, not necessarily the Trumpiest Republican on the planet. So I think that your name added to this letter, I think, carries quite a bit of weight.
Well, look, I organized this letter together with these other conservative leaders who I've known for many, many years. And the letter's intended to be a message to Nikki Haley that this is the moment for unity. If you really look at the condition of the president and the challenges internationally, particularly that we're facing, domestically that we're facing, you really got to have a president who's with it. And this is the moment when we have to rally together as Republicans, offer a unity position on the election, and defeat President Biden. It's really important to the country. And I think conservatives have a voice, and they ought to recognize that their leaders are coming together behind the candidacy of President Trump.
Yeah, Nikki Haley clearly still has quite a bit of money at her disposal. She continues to raise money, and a lot of it is coming from political entities that are either just outright anti-Trump or, for that matter, anti-conservative. They're actually, you know, their money will not be with her in the general election should she win the nomination. It's going to Joe Biden. Does that concern you, that money is so fungible and so easily sort of fluid across party lines right now, that a Republican would stay in the race even though knowing that she's being propped up by people who have no interest in helping a Republican?
Well, I think that's right, Larry. And the fact is that money in a national race is terribly important because you have to be in a position to advertise to so many places at once. But what I've learned is that while money is crucial, it's not the only thing. And what is the only thing is the overall condition of the country, the overall position of the various candidates. And the fact is that the Republican voters in these caucuses, one after the other in these primaries, have spoken. Mm-hmm. And that's really where I am at this point. We recognize that you know, nobody's a perfect candidate, but the fact is that we have to recognize that the party has to come together. This is the moment to do it. If Nikki Haley stays in and continues to throw brickbats because her financiers want her to do it, and she continues to be critical of her own candidacy, and then President Biden is reelected, there's a risk that she at that point is blamed. And that was the point that we made, that Rockefeller staying in too long. Listen, I ran myself in 2016, and there comes a point in time at which you should not stay because you damaged yourself and you damaged the country. And we think that's where Governor Haley is right now.
Governor, what is her end game? I think people are confused why she has stayed in so long and she's showing no signs that she plans to quit. What do you think is sort of the reason she's staying in?
Well, you see, I think it's a healthy discussion to have, Julie. I think it's the right question to ask at this point because she's not going to be the nominee, and South Carolina is going to certainly demonstrate that in addition to everything else. Then the question is, why stay? And look, you can speculate. You can speculate. Perhaps she thinks that President Trump is not going to win, and then that the party is magically going to transform away from the way that it is right now, willing to support a candidate like President Trump. into a whole new position with a whole new candidate and a whole new attitude. I just don't think that's very practical. I think the Republican Party at this point is expressing frustration and concern and wanting to see change. And they think that President Trump is the most likely change element, and that's why they're rallying to him.
Governor Jim Gilmore of Virginia is our guest. And, of course, Governor, you were also the chairman of the Republican National Committee. I believe we talked to you when Ronna McDaniel was running for an unprecedented fourth term, and you had said, maybe she should step aside and let someone else take the job, right? No one's ever been there that long. Now it turns out, it appears after 1 year in this fourth term, that she is going to be stepping down. Do you have any opinion on the idea that Laura Trump, the daughter-in-law of President Trump, is now his choice for co-chair?
Well, I think this is a moment when the RNC ought to get its members together and decide who they want their leadership to be. Now, I admit that when I was chairman of the RNC, I was there because I was the selection of President George W. Bush. And the RNC at that point was enthusiastic about President Bush, and they wanted his leadership in there, and that's why I was put into the position. So there's a long tradition of the candidate, or not the candidate. There's a long tradition of the person who is the president offering his leadership to the RNC. But I think this is the moment when the people in the RNC could look at this and say that the party is larger than any one person, and there's an opportunity to consider all of it. I don't know Laura Trump. Perhaps she's a very able person, and that perhaps she would be a good vice chairman, particularly since I think the chairman is being considered to be a gentleman from someplace else, I think.
North Carolina, Mr. Whatley is his name, Michael Whatley.
So I heard.
Yeah. All right.
I heard. So these are the issues that are facing us. But the reason that I asked these fellow conservatives to join this letter, which they did, and look at the names that are on this letter.
Oh yeah, it's quite a roll call here. You've got Kenneth Blackwell, you've got Brent Bozell, you've got Ed Meese, you've got the publisher of the American Spectator, Emmett Tyrrell. I mean, it's across the board, legendary names in the Republican Party.
And not all people who have historically been just simple followers of President Trump.
Right.
But I think that this is the time that look at where we are. The Republican voters and have spoken. And so we have to face reality at such a point, and we think Governor Haley should face that reality. It's really best for her, and it's especially best for the party, and we think it's best for the United States, considering what the election is starting to look like with the mental condition of President Biden.
You have not heard back from the Haley campaign about this letter yet, have you?
Not yet, but I've run national campaigns. So they're very busy people, you see, particularly with her running the country.
Oh, I'm sure they're aware of the message here, Governor Gilmore. But you're right.
Yeah.
Probably too busy to pick up the phone. All right, well, let us know if you hear from them.
Communicated yet? Well, we shall.
Jim Gilmore, Governor of Virginia, always good to talk with you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.